Hello and welcome back to the Dean's Data Depot. My name is Jeffrey Dean, and right here I will be bringing you weekly sports analysis and data insights right here on MUTV. Now, on the docket for this week is a look inside the MLB's pitching progression and how that has changed over time, and a look at how that might affect this year's Cy Young race that is tightening up in both the American and the National League. So, in the last 2 years, we've seen a spike in pitching and hitting as analytics have started to shape how pitchers and batters approach the game. Now, over time, over the last about 25 years, we've seen a rise in the number of strikeouts per game, but it's also been associated with a high increase in home runs per game and the number of at-bats that end with home runs. Now, why that is largely due to the use of analytics to help shape where pitchers are throwing the ball, what types of pitches batters are more likely or less likely to hit, and that has then transformed into a huge jump in the amount of strikeouts that pitchers are throwing per 9 innings. As you can see here, in 2020, it was a high of 9.1 strikeouts per 9 innings for MLB pitchers. So that's about 1 strikeout every inning compared to back in 2000 when it was about 6.5, or roughly 2 strikeouts every 3 innings. The 3 highest strikeout per 9 inning years on record were 2020, 2021, and 2019 respectively. That has also been, those are the same years in which we've seen the highest number of home runs hit per game. In 2019 was the highest year, followed by 2020, 2017, and 2021. So how will that affect 16.5% of at-bats ended with a strikeout. About half of at-bats ended with some sort of field out, and just under 10% were a walk. Now, if we look at how that changes into 2021, about a 6.8 increase in the last 25 years of at-bats that end with a strikeout. We saw earlier how that number of strikeouts per 9 inning has increased over just the last 15 to 20 years. Now, there was also a 4.2% drop in field outs, given that there was a large increase of outs happening at the plate, and then also a drop in the amount of hits, the number of at-bats that ended with hits, about just over a 2% drop in those numbers. So now only 21.5% of at-bats are ending with a hit. Now 23% of at-bats are ending with a strikeout, and down to 46% of at-bats ending with a field out. It's interesting to note, though, that the number of walks, the number of at-bats that are ending with a walk is about the same, only 8.7%. Now, this is, if we look at those over time, we can see back, with the beginning of baseball, there's a huge percentage of hits. That sort of stabilized as we entered the mid-1900s and has started to tail off in recent years, whereas the number of home runs, the percent of those hits that are home runs has increased. You can see here, number of at-bats ending with a home run was pretty low for much of baseball's history, but has recently climbed in the past few years. Now, if we look at how that's the number of hits that go for home runs, it's about 15% now. So 15% of hits are going for home runs compared to just 10 or so years ago when that was closer to around 10 or 11%. So nearly a 4 to 5% increase of hits ending with a home run in the recent past. Now, how does that impact the Cy Young Award? So this year, 2 pitchers in the American League, 2 pitchers in the National League have separated themselves from the pack. In the AL, Garrett Cole has been the favorite to win it for most of the year, with Lance Lynn of the Chicago White Sox knocking on the door around the middle of the season, but now his closest competitor is Robbie Ray of the Toronto Blue Jays. So in the AL, these 2 are the cream of the crop. They are number 1 and number 2 in 3 of the 4 major categories: strikeouts per 9 innings, ERA, and wins above replacement. Robbie Ray is 3rd in the number of strikeouts per 9 inning at 11.5, and Garrett Cole is number 1. One important thing to note is that Robbie Ray, 6.7 wins above replacement, highest for pitchers across the league. Garrett Cole, his best finish across the league is his 217 strikeouts, which are tied for first with Zach Wheeler of the Philadelphia Phillies. So, and one of the interesting things to see how this will shape going forward is Garrett Cole's injury. He left in a game against the Toronto Blue Jays with a hamstring injury, and that may impact how this Cy Young race goes forward, given Robbie Ray is starting to heat up, throwing double-digit strikeouts in, I believe, his last 4 outings. So now, going over to the NL, there's 2 other pitchers, Walker Bueller and Corbin Burns, also at the top of their league. However, they are not quite as dominant in the NL as Ray and Cole are in their respective league. Walker Bueller, second in ERA. That also puts him second overall in the league. One of the things about the AL stats is while they were high in the AL, they were further down on the MLB league list. So Corbin Burns, his 12.3 strikeouts per 9 inning places him second in the NL, third in the majors overall. If you notice, their wins above replacement, 4.8 for Corbin Burns, 5.5 for Walker Bueller, but both Cole and Ray have higher wins above replacement. So that's something interesting between how pitching compares between the AL and the NL. Now, if we look back at how these stat placements can help guide us to who might win the Cy Young Awards this year. So we'll start with wins above replacement. There are 6 instances in which both pitchers with the highest wins above replacement in their respective leagues also won the Cy Young Award, and there have only been 2 years in the last 15 years, 2 instances in which neither wins above replacement leader won a Cy Young Award. Now, who does this bode well for? That's going to be Robbie Ray, the leader in the AL in wins above replacement. So we'll give him a point as we sort of tally who we can expect to come out with the Cy Young Award. Now, moving on is the strikeout leaders. Garrett Cole, tied for first, is putting himself in a good position. Those strikeouts have not necessarily been a great indicator of Cy Young winning performances. Only in 2011 did both strikeout leaders in their respective leagues win the Cy Young Award. There have been several instances in which one of them have won the Cy Young Award, but very rarely has it been both, which does bode well for Garrett Cole, given Zach Bueller is not necessarily in contention for the Cy Young Award in the NL. So we'll give Cole a point there, tying him with Ray for 1. It'll be with the 2 of them jockeying for the Cy Young Award in the AL. We can sort of watch how their tallies change. Now, we look at ERA. Both Bueller is second in the NL, so we won't be able to give him a point, but this is how ERA leaders in their respective leagues have fared. Most recently in 2020, both ERA leaders won the Cy Young Award in 2018 and 2011 as well. Only 3 instances. However, there were only 3 instances in which neither ERA winner won. So this does bode well for Walker Bueller, though we won't be able to give him a point as he does not lead the NL in ERA. Who does? Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray's 2.6 ERA puts him in a good position to win the Cy Young Award, so we'll give him a second point. Now, this is ERA and wins above replacement leaders who have led in both of those categories in their league. There are 12 of them. Shane Bieber most recently to lead their league in both wins above replacement and ERA, and just Zach Greinke and Clayton Kershaw in the NL have failed to win the Cy Young after leading their league in both ERA and wins above replacement. So 10 of the 12 pitchers to lead their league in both ERA and wins above replacement in the last 15 years have won the Cy Young Award. Again, Robbie Ray is doing that. So we'll give him 2 points for how frequently this happens. So he now has 4 points compared to Garrett Cole's just 1. So while the books are favoring Garrett Cole, this shows that we shouldn't necessarily be surprised to see Robbie Ray win the Cy Young Award in the American League. Now, if you notice, Walker Bueller and Corbin Burns each received 0 points, so we can't necessarily draw a ton of conclusions from this, though, as we've seen, ERA and wins above replacement are good indicators as to how the pitcher may fare when it comes to Cy Young Award voting, and that would be Walker Bueller, who has an advantage over Corbin Burns in both of those stat categories. Now, this is not an end-all be-all metric, but it is interesting to see how that will guide voting and how that may shake out in the coming weeks as the MLB season draws to a close. I'm Jeffrey Dean, and this has been the Dean's Data Depot. I'll see you next week.